So Hare Krishna. So today we will discuss based on one of the important sections from the Bhagavad Gita. This is the section in the second chapter from the 54th verse to the 72nd verse. This is called the STHITAPRAJNA section. In fact, this is one of the most quoted sections of the Gita. Both by Srila Prabhupada as well as by previous acharyas, and even in the outside world, this is a fairly well-known section. So I will use a particular metaphor to explain this particular series of verses. So this is basically the characteristics of a spiritual warrior. Spiritual warrior. So the metaphor we'll be using is that our consciousness is like a disputed territory, and we are fighting a war. We are fighting a war to protect our consciousness. So now we could say we are ourselves spiritual beings, and on the one side there is the powerful intruding army of Maya, and on the other side there is the army of Krishna. And our consciousness is caught in between, and Maya wants to rush into our consciousness, conquer our consciousness. Now, sometimes we want to protect ourselves from Maya, sometimes we want to protect ourselves from Krishna. Because if I think that Maya is so attractive, Krishna, don't interfere with my life now. I want to enjoy right now. Don't get in my way. So we are caught in between. So this is a disputed territory, and in this war, how do we win? First of all, we'll have to discuss, do we even want to win? And we'll try to understand the entire series of verses in terms of this metaphor of the war. So let's begin by looking at some of the verses. We won't recite all the verses because there are a number of verses here. I'll take a good amount of time to go through all of them. So in the context of the Gita, this comes after Krishna has just spoken about the characteristics of a transcendental person. So basically what has happened over here is, let's recite this verse. So I'll explain the meaning and then we'll recite it together. Okay, Arjuna said, Sthita Prajna. So Prajna has various meanings, but we can say here it refers to intelligence or consciousness. Sthita Prajna, that means one whose intelligence is fixed. Ka Bhasha. So the word Bhasha has many different meanings. In this context it means characteristics. Vita pragyasya ka bhasha. Then samadhisthasya. Krishna is repeating the same thing. Arjuna is repeating the same thing. So he wants to make it very clear who is he talking about. So he uses actually 3 different describers to describe that person about whom he wants to know. First describer is Sthita Prajna. Second describer is Samadhistha, one who is situated in Samadhi. Samadhisthasya Keshava. Oh Keshava, I want to know about the person who is situated in Samadhi. And then Sthita Dhi. Now Dhi, it's interesting, the word Sthita has come twice. In the first line and third line also. Now Dhi can mean, again, intelligence, it can mean consciousness. Kim prabhasheta, how do they speak? Now here it's in singular. So how does such a person speak, kim prabhasheta. And then finally, kim asit. Kim asit is how does person situated, and vrajet kim, how does the person move about. So let's recite it together 3 times. Arjunuvacha sthitapragyasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. Arjunuvacha sthitapragyasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. Arjunuvacha sthitapragyasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. So here, if we focus on this metaphor of the war for consciousness. So, kim asita vrajeta kim. What that means is, we'll come back to one by one. So, asita means how does such a person defend the consciousness? How is person situated? Like if the soldiers are there on the boundary. So how are the soldiers situated? They have to defend the boundary. How do they situate themselves so that they can defend the boundary? But we don't want to be defenders all the time. So vrajeta refers to how do they attack. At one level, we want to protect the territory of our consciousness, but we don't want to be just defending all the time. No, throughout our life, our purpose is not just to say no to temptations and to protect ourselves from temptation. We want to do something meaningful also in life. And for that purpose, it's attack. We want to function in the world and do certain things even while we may be tempted by the objects of the world. So how do we defend? How do we attack? These are 2 basic characteristics. If there is any war, there is defending and there is attacking. But before that, he says, prabhasheta. So prabhashet means how do they speak. So here the speech refers basically, literally it means speech. But through the speech, the fighting spirit is conveyed. Like sometimes, say there is a big cricket match going on between 2 countries, and sometimes one country may have won 50 previous matches against the other country. The second country has never won. So one team may say that we are going to crush the opposing team, and the other team may say, we hope to put up a good show. Now, we hope to put up a good show means what? It may mean that we will win. It may also mean we will lose, but not by 300 runs. So if we lost by 250 runs, that is also a good show. So good show is like a very vague term, isn't it? So how much confidence a person has, how much spirit a person has, that is conveyed through their speech. So kim prabhasheta. And then the first of all is bhasha. So bhasha is like the basic characteristic. How do I know somebody is a warrior? Now we may say somebody is in the police and they have particular dress. But then we have undercover cops also. Isn't it? Somebody may be in the army and they have a uniform. But then there are commandos who may be spies who go into the opposite territory. There may be secret agents. They may not wear any uniform also. So a uniform is not necessarily a defining characteristic of a warrior. Now we may say, what is the characteristic of a warrior? The warrior, we may say that a warrior is someone who is trained to fight, someone who is very alert, somebody who loves their country, somebody who is ready to do whatever it takes to protect their country. We could have various characteristics. So like that, basically here, it is the convictions. You have to have some basic convictions. if somebody doesn't love their country, then very few people may be ready to lay down their life for the country. Now, of course, somebody may say, that's just my job. And they may go and fight for that also. But then they have some conviction about the power of money. You know, my family is poor, and if I go into the military, then I'll get enough salary to take care of my family, and even if I die, the government will supply for my family after I die. So there has to be some conviction. So what is the core conviction if somebody wants to be a spiritual warrior? And what is their fighting spirit as it is seen in words? And then how do they defend themselves, and how do they counterattack, or how do they attack? These are the 4 broad characteristics. So now, if we take this broadly speaking into mind, so let's begin. Now, how many verses are there in this section? 54 to? That's how much? 19. All of you are good at maths. So now there are 4 questions. So we could say we will focus on the sections. The first, like the defining characteristic, the convictions, are explained in 1 verse by Krishna, 55. Then 56 to 57 is the spirit, the fighting spirit that they have, as seen through their speech. Then 58 to 63 is the defense. How do they defend? And 64 to 71 is the offense. 72 is the conclusion. In this way, this whole section is about the inner war. When a war is happening, how can we fight this war? How can we win this war? That's what is being described. So we will take this metaphor, and today I'll try to speak from 54 to 57, and tomorrow we'll look at 58 to 63, and last day we'll talk from 64 to 71. Of course, we may overlap a few verses. I may take some points from here and there also. So let's begin with this question. So when we talk about the inner war or the spiritual war, let's start with a question. Why? What is the need to fight such a war? What do you think? By the way, have you heard this metaphor of a war before? Where have you heard this? Sorry? You can raise your hand. So why do we need to fight the war? What is this war about? I gave some explanation, but what you have heard from, I want to take from that point onwards. Yeah?
Something which is our right and we are not getting it.
Okay, so it's to protect our rights. So what is our right that we are trying to protect here?
Here, in this life, we got to know that we are servants of Krishna. But for so long, we are serving Maya. So that inside unnatural has become natural. That by default, we are serving Maya. But now
Okay.
we want to serve Krishna.
So what is the result if we serve Krishna, and what is the result if we serve Maya? What is the difference?
If we serve Krishna, then our life will be successful. And if we serve Maya, then again and again we will come to this world and repeat it.
Yes, so we stay entangled. We stay entangled in this world if we are serving Maya. And we become enriched and liberated as Krishna manifests in our hearts. So this is the first thing. Whenever we have to fight a war is not an easy thing. And generally, if somebody fights a war, that means they are convinced that the stakes are very high, that this is worth fighting about. Normally speaking, we may decide, okay, whenever there is a war, and there is no war. Say, let's not fight. So if somebody says, let's not fight. So there are three reasons, broadly speaking, when somebody may decide, I don't want to fight. So can you think of why, say for example, you may known about when just about a year ago in Israel, the Gaza Strip, the militant, the Hamas attacked Israel. And they plundered and killed many people. Now, Israel is actually a very, very small country. And it has a very small population. Now, actually, all of Israel is less than 1/3 of Kolkata. It's that small. But it has a huge influence. Whatever reasons, we'll go into that. But say Israel was attacked. And now they have waged a war. They are waging a war against Hamas. They are waging a war against Hezbollah. Now many social and political observers are commenting. You know, there was one time a number of almost 24 bombs were exploded in Mumbai. There's a terrorist attack in Mumbai. And that time, the Indian government didn't do anything. Now maybe some countries, America, and they appreciate India's restraint at that time. Now whether that was a good thing or not, whether that caused them to increase the cross-border terrorism against India, that's something which is open to discuss. But say, India decided not to fight against Pakistan. Now, Israel decided we are going to attack Hamas. They attack Hamas on one side, which is in the Gaza Strip, and the other side Hezbollah is there, which is in the West Bank. They decided to attack there also. So if somebody decides we don't want to fight, and somebody decides we want to fight, what could be the reasons? Somebody said, no, we have decided not to fight. We have decided not to attack. What could be the reasons? Okay, one aspect could be, maybe we are not strong enough. So, and it may be true at times. China is slowly occupying the territory of Bhutan and Nepal. It's already occupied Tibet. Now Bhutan says that we are going to fight against China. People will say, what bhoot has got into you? Isn't it? How can a tiny country, it has no major weapons, how can you fight? So now, can they fight? Well, generally, that could be one assessment. We're just not strong enough to fight. Now, Vietnam fought against America, and America had to go back. America fought against Afghanistan, and you might have seen how eventually Americans all left Afghanistan. So the Taliban is back in power over here. So sometimes it could be that a side is not strong enough, or it is felt that we are not strong enough. So one is we are not strong enough. That's one reason we might not fight. Now, not strong enough could be just a perception, maybe we are strong enough, or it could be a reality, whatever it is. That's one reason we may decide we don't want to fight. So, yes? Okay. Yes, okay. So we may say that it's not worth it. Not worth it means that in every situation, see, there is the price, what we will get out of it. And there is the price, what we'll have to pay for it. So normally, if somebody feels the price, say, if somebody says, okay, you'll get this product. Okay, it's a brand new phone. Okay, how much cost? 25 lakhs. 25 lakhs a phone, forget it. Who wants a phone like that? So maybe there's some super specialist phone, some super wealthy person may want that, but it's not worth it. Now again, this is an assessment. It may be right, it may not be right. Maybe it's not worth, the price here is too much to pay. And we don't want to lose, or we don't want to get ourselves involved in it. So Russia-Ukraine war has been going on, and Russia has been steadily winning against Ukraine. So Ukraine just suddenly changed strategy. All along Ukraine was defending against Russia's forces. So Ukraine suddenly attacked Russia from a different side. And they conquered some Russian territory. Now their hope was that Russia's energy will be diverted And then they can negotiate with Russia that, we will give your territory back to you, you give our territory back to us. But Russia has just neglected. Okay, you conquered that, you stay conquered over there, we'll keep attacking. So what happened is the area in Russia that they have conquered, it is not strategically very important. But the area in Ukraine which they are trying to conquer, and they're very close to conquering, that is very strategically important. Strategically important means what? There's a lot of energy power plants might be there. There might be a lot of people might be there. A lot of important infrastructure might be there. So, say, now that is in India-Pakistan war, that is Delhi is fairly far away. For Pakistan to reach Delhi is going to be very difficult. But for India to reach Islamabad is fairly easy if India decides. So because Islamabad is fairly close to the border. So, say, if India loses some city in Gujarat, and India wins Islamabad, India may say, we'll still focus on conquering Islamabad, even if we lose this territory, it doesn't matter so much. You're getting this dynamic? That we may decide, okay, even if we lose this side, it's not worth the fight. Here we are winning something more. So there's always the prize that we are considering. Somebody may say, it's not worth this fight. Even if they take this territory, it's okay. Sometimes we may decide that this territory is very important. So the Kargil war occurred. At that time, it was like whenever a war is happening, if some army is on top of a hill, then that gives a lot of strategic advantage. From there, you can attack the enemy very easily. So, this we are not going to lose. If we're going to lose, whatever it takes, we're going to conquer it back. So, there is war strategies there. Or somebody may decide it's not worth it. What else could be the reason? One fundamental thing can happen. Like in Israel, when the militants from Gaza, the Hamas came in, what happened initially? Innocent people were killed. But then why did Israel not defend? Initially Israel didn't defend. Why not? Yeah? Okay. So that's why they may decide as a strategy we don't want to counter it. Let's see how much they can attack. That's one possibility, definitely. It's an interesting possibility. But a very fundamental thing. Yeah? Okay. I think, I'm asking for a very simple answer, you're giving very sophisticated answers. So basically what happens there was, they didn't even realize there was an attack. Initially, because there was some intelligence failure, so what happened was Israel over-relied on technology. So on their fence, they had practically no soldiers. They thought our technological cameras and everything, they will tell us if the enemy attacks. But Hamas, by whatever they did, they destroyed all the cameras and they just attacked and they're plundering. And they just came into the opponent territory and started plundering, and because it was such a remote area, it is not a remote area, but they had no soldiers. They said there are no boots on the ground. So we may not fight because there is no realization that we are in the war. So for example, if some place we are, say now India-China boundary, it's like a very big boundary. India is a large country, China is a large country. Now you cannot have soldiers at each place throughout the border, isn't it? So now if China rushes in some place, and if we don't have our guards over there, if we don't have our cameras over there, we may not even realize there is a war going on. And we lose without even fighting, because we don't even know there is a war going on. So before we can win a war, we have to know that we are in a war, isn't it? So before we can win a war, we have to know that we are in a war. And if somebody doesn't even realize we are in a war, we may say that's stupid, how can you not realize you are in a war? But it is possible. So in war, there is basically the military, or basically you can say the armed forces. You may have the military, you may have the Air Force, you may have the Navy, but apart from that, there's the intelligence. Now, intelligence there refers to something different from what we use the word intelligence. Like intelligence is basically all the forces who get you information. You have heard the words? The intelligence in that context? It was basically an intelligence failure. That means our spies or our espionage, our information gathering apparatus, that just failed completely. So when in the 1960s, when China suddenly attacked India, India was caught off guard because the Indian Prime Minister at that time was lulled into complacency. He says, "Oh, Hindi chini bhai bhai." They were saying there, Hindi chini bhai bhai, and suddenly ek bhai ne dusre ko maar dala. So what happened was they didn't even realize that the opposite side has some bad intentions and they are attacking us and we have to defend ourselves. So for somebody may not fight because they don't realize there is a war going on, or they don't think it is so important to fight, or they don't think they have a chance for winning. So why fight? So broadly speaking, for us also, when there is this war against Maya, there is that things, okay, am I also in a fight at all? That's the first question. Is it really worth fighting? What is the big deal? And then, even if I fight, is it even possible to win? That's a question, isn't it? So, let's try to understand these three things in terms of the inner war. So, is there a real fight? Are we really fighting? So for example, you may think, yeah, it's like, yes, who is that? There was one British thinker, Oscar Wilde, said that giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world. I have done it over 100 times. So, what happened? If you gave it over 100 times, means you gave it up, but it didn't give you up. Isn't it? It kept coming back and catching. So sometimes, some people may not even realize that some habit has caught them. Whenever I want, I can give it up. But whenever I have to give it up, I don't want to give it up. It becomes like that. So, we may not realize that sometimes a habit, a behavior, the habit has caught us. Or, we may not even realize the habit is bad. Like, what's wrong with it? In the West, they have in the West, drinking is a very common part of daily life. They say that drink, but don't get drunk. So what that means is, it's like you go to the edge of a cliff, bend down and look as much as you want bending down. But just don't slip and fall down. Well, why take the risk? Isn't it? Now, is it possible that some people may drink and not become drunk? It's possible. But there is a big risk over there. Because that habit, when it becomes compulsive, a person may not even realize it. What they say is, first, a drinker takes a drink. Then the drink takes another drink. And then the drink takes the drinker. So like that, the habit becomes compulsive. And we may not realize how strong it has become. So, the point is that before we can fight a war, we have to know this is a war. That I am in a war. So what is the war over here? In our case, the war is that when do we actually realize that I am in a war? When we have a certain intention, our intention is in one direction and our action goes exactly in the opposite direction. So that is the time when we can get some realization. Say for example, I decide, I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to yell at others. And I decide I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to yell at others. And then I start getting angry. And somebody else warns me, hey, you're getting angry. I'm not getting angry. So we get angry that somebody is reminding us that we got angry. So then afterwards we realize, hey, why did I do that? What happened? So we sometimes just beat ourselves up, why did I do like that? We may decide I'm not going to oversleep and we oversleep. We decide I'm not going to overeat and we overeat. We decide I'm not going to spend so much time on social media and we spend hours and hours. So many times what happens, we just beat ourselves up for doing something like that. But rather than simply beating ourselves up, I have no willpower, I'm such a foolish person. We can think like that, but that's not very helpful. That is the time we need to realize that there is something inside us that works against us. That means it's almost like, say, I am here, and there's a part of me which wants to go here, but there is also a part of me which wants to go exactly in the opposite side. And sometimes the part of me which wants to go ahead wins, and many times the part that is there inside me which wants to go against, in the opposite direction, that wins. So when this happens, this is the time we can actually realize there is a war inside me. So, who is the war in between? Let's not get into any philosophy right now, from a practical perspective. How many of us have this experience that we decide to do something and then we end up doing the exact opposite? Anyone has that experience? No. Anyone doesn't have that experience? If you don't have, either you are a pure devotee or you are a pure fool. It means we are so caught and we don't even realize. See, if somebody feels that I never do anything against my intentions, that means you never have any good intentions only. Because we all end up doing things which we don't want to do, isn't it? So this is the time we need to realize. At one level we can say that who is the war between? If I want to go in a particular direction, these are my values. Now it could be any values. Even forget spirituality. Okay, I come to college, I want to study. I want to make my parents proud. I want to make them happy. Those are my values. But then, okay, I see some other kids, where they go to a party, they booze, they have a lot of double quotes, fun, whatever it means. And they waste their time. And I also have those desires. So we could say there is a war between our values and our desires. This is just one way of understanding it. This is what I want to do, or this is who I want to become. This is what I would like to become. We have our values and we have our desires. And sometimes there is a war between the two of them. So another way to understand this is that there is what we want, and there is what we want to want. What I want is, I just want to eat a lot of delicious food. I just want to enjoy life. What I want to want is, maybe I want to be fit. I want to be healthy. I want to be focused. I want to do justice to my God-given talents. I want to make a difference in the world. So there is what we want and what we want to want. So what we want to want are our values. What we want is our desires, our cravings, our impulses. And between these two, there is a war. So it's important that whenever we do something that whenever we do any self-defeating action means our own action defeats our intentions. So one way to do it is just to beat ourselves. What a fool I am. The other is to deny. No, actually I never had a plan to do anything like that. And somebody decides, okay, I'm going to read Bhagavad Gita every day 1 hour. And then we don't do it. We spend time so much on reading this and watching this, and then, hey, what a fool I am. I says, actually, I'm young. Bhagavad Gita, when I grow old, I'll read it. Doesn't matter. So we deny that we even had made any plan about it. But these are two extremes, like two extremes of a pendulum. what we need to do is realize that I am at war. I am at war with something inside me. There is something inside me that works against me, that impels me to do something that I do not want to do. So it's like, so going back to the war metaphor, it's sometimes we have enemies outside. Say India may have enemies outside India. Say in Pakistan's army is India's enemy. But sometimes Pakistan may have some enemies inside our own army. Isn't it? So you may know in South India there was a big kingdom, which was the Vijayanagar kingdom, which was established by Krishna Dev Rai. That was like the first major resistance. There are 3-4 kings who actually resisted the Islamic rule. Shivaji Maharaj was one, Krishna Dev Rai was another. Now Krishna Dev Rai was very powerful and the Vijayanagar kingdom was phenomenally prosperous. But eventually what happened was, later on, a few generations later, one of the kings over there, he was fighting and he had a commander with him. And that general turned out to be a traitor. So the king was on the battlefield fighting against his enemies, and suddenly his own commander turned and attacked him and knocked off his head. And he was undefeatable. But the king suddenly killed. The king killed from within. Then the whole army fell apart. And then they just lost. So sometimes there might be an enemy inside. And that enemy inside is the most dangerous. Because that enemy inside can just kill, destroy completely. So like that, there are sense objects out there. There's alcoholism for an alcoholic. There is the bottle out there, which is, you could say, an enemy. But that enemy out there also has an agent in here. That is my own desire, the person's desire to drink. So we could say both are enemies, but which is the more dangerous enemy? The one that is inside. So like that, when you say there is a war inside us, means that there is something which is like a traitor. A traitor means gaddar. The traitor inside me. So the problem is, if we don't recognize it as a traitor, we won't be able to fight against it. So we have to recognize first of all that it's a traitor. So what we say are the anarthas. Which are the 6 anarthas? Lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, illusion. So essentially these are inner enemies. Let's try to understand why they are enemies. Let's take with something which is now easy to understand, anger. Nowadays people may think actually lust is a source of enjoyment. And there is some Bollywood star, recently she said, for a successful relationship, lust is as important as love. Now, that's, some people will talk about what's wrong with that. But people may think, oh, lust is just natural, it's just biological, there are people who say, discover the passion. They may use it in terms of, I want to increase the desire. I saw some ad which said, discover the beast within you. Wow, we want to destroy the beast within, not discover the beast within. But lust, some people may think it is good. But anger, almost everybody understands. Anger is bad. That when we get angry, what happens with anger? For example, in 15 minutes of anger can destroy 15 years of relationship. Isn't it? So 15 minutes of rage, of angry words. We can just speak something, yes, you did this and you did this and you did this, and the relationship can be completely destroyed. So what happens is, there is a part of us which feel that this relationship is important, I want to protect it, I want to preserve it. But there is a part of us which just works against it. When it works against it, then it just shakes and devastates and destroys us. So, for us, for each one of us, recognizing that we are in a war is important. And we may have to think that, look back at, this is an exercise you can do later, maybe today evening, tomorrow, preferably before the class. You don't have to share the exercise, but think of a time when you did something which was totally opposed to what you wanted to do, and it had terrible consequences. Something was really very important for you, you wanted to do it, and you ended up doing something completely opposite. And then through that, try to realize this is a real thing, that there is something inside me. Most of us think, I'm a good person, I have not really hurt anyone. Why should anyone be out there to hurt me? Like, if somebody is themselves like an underworld don or someone, then they will have so many other enemies. They will want to knock them down. Somebody is themselves a great fighter, a powerful, good or bad, whatever it is. Like somebody, the president of a country, there are so many people who want to assassinate the president. Just recently, American former president, 2 assassination attempts were there. So, if some people, they have a target on their back, a target on their head. You may think, I'm a good person, I'm just going along with my life. Now, who would want to destroy me? So, there is something inside us which does want to destroy us. So it may be anger, it may be greed, it may be pride, that sometimes because of any of these, we end up doing something which harms something that we really valued. So anger is probably the best thing, because anger is something we all experience sooner or later. That's the time we realize something is there inside me. Now for me, it was when I was studying engineering. Since my childhood, I used to get angry a little bit. And that's a little understatement. But anyway, I never realized that it was a big issue. But once I was in my engineering, so I was doing some experiment in the lab, and suddenly a friend told me, hey, there's wildlife on your body. And even before I understood what was there, my first words were, hey, don't hurt it. Then I looked around and there was some kind of insect crawling on my shirt. So then my friend had just raised his hand to squash it. And I said, don't hurt it. And he had just kept his hand frozen. Then I looked at it. Then I just walked up to the nearby window, put my finger over there. That insect crawled onto the finger, and then I gently let it out of the window. And I turned and looked at my friend. I don't know, he was looking at me with big bemused eyes. Somehow, that side of the eyes stayed in my mind. And then that evening, we were in our mess, and we were making a mess. So, we were talking, and this friend told me, I have to tell you something. Okay. So a few months ago, we had been doing a project together, and a mistake had happened. And so he had let me believe that I had committed the mistake. But he told me, actually, I had made that mistake. I had lost that thing or whatever it was. So when I heard this, I just felt so angry. I banged my fist. I just jumped. I said, I'll kill you. And I rose my voice and rose my fist. And when I was just doing like that, somehow his eyes went wide open. And when I saw those wide open eyes, that reminded me of those big wide open eyes earlier in the afternoon. It's almost as if I froze. So it was like, say, I am here, and I felt as if I was looking at myself from above. And then there was this person before. So I started thinking, hey, who is the real me? In the afternoon, I was not ready to hurt even an ant. And now I am about to smash the face of my friend. So is that the real me? And is this something artificial? Or is this the real me and that was something artificial? So that's what just started me off on. I was always an avid reader, but from that time onwards, I started reading more about psychology, more about philosophy, more about spirituality. And that's why when I came to Bhagavad Gita and 336, where Arjuna asks, Athakena paryuktoyam papam charati purusha. What is it that makes us do things that we don't want to do? Anichanapi varshneya. Balad iva niyojita. By force it makes us do something like that. I found that question very relevant. It took me a lot of time to understand the answer. I'm not sure I have fully understood right now also. Because in real life, how the inner world works, and when what is happening and how it is happening, all that is very difficult to understand. But that was one time when I realized that there is something really serious inside me. Now, I don't want to be known as a violent person who wants to go and beat some. Not just I don't want to be known like that. I don't want to be like that also. So, now would I have actually beaten my friend if suddenly that those eyes had not struck me and I had paused? I don't know. I hope not. It was just words and not actions. But it struck me that there is something inside me that can impel me to do things that are completely against my values. So I said, which is the real me? So I hope the real me is the one who won't want to hurt an insect also. But how can I be sure about that? So is this the real me and is this the out of character me? Or is this the real me and that is just the show, the me I want to show myself to others? So for all of us, if we can do some introspection and think of such incidents where our actions seem to be very contrary to our values, that's the time we realize, hey, this is a real war. And this war, if I lose the war, the consequences can be terrible. So it's like they say, have you heard this word? Demons? Now I'm talking more, we all have heard about demons in terms of Rakshasas. But nowadays people say, there are some demons inside me. This boxer Mike Tyson, he was fighting a match and he started losing the match. He was just fighting, got so angry, he just couldn't defeat the opponent. So he actually attacked the opponent and bit off his ear. And he was banned for some time from playing. And that time, after that match, in an interview, said, I have got some terrible demons inside me. So they say that there are some angels inside us and there are some demons inside us. Now if we follow the angels, we become a better person. If we follow the demons, if we let the demons control us, we become a worse person. So now the demons and angels is just one way of putting it. But the idea is that there is a real war going on inside. And to the extent we realize it, so basically what happens, as I said, we just go to one of these two responses. What a terrible person I am when we do something wrong. Or we say, actually it's not such a big thing. I've always been such a good person. That one time something happened, why did you take it so seriously? Just forget it. Yeah, there is some truth to that, just forget it. But it's not easy to forget like that. Because, what we may do at such times, it may be completely at odds with the character of a person. There's one devotee couple in Australia and Oceania. Before they were introduced to Bhakti, they were running a dating agency. In the West, there is no concept of arranged marriage. There's no one to arrange the marriage. So parents have their own life and the children have their own life. So anyway, so there is, when people are getting married, especially say from the woman's side, she may be afraid that, is this man a violent man? If he gets angry, will he beat me? But domestic violence is a fear for many people. So they say what they do is, they arrange that when a couple, they are seeing each other, they go for a date. So they go to a particular restaurant and they have the waiter in that restaurant on their payroll. So now whenever a boy and a girl meet each other, so they want to put their best face forward. I'm such a nice person, they'll dress nicely, they'll talk nicely. So now what the waiter does is, deliberately goes and maybe spills some food or some water on the clothes of the boy. And then how does the boy react at that time? So then I asked them, do you try that with a girl also? So he says, men may become physically violent. Women often become verbally violent. It's verbally violent, Women can speak. Anger is there in everyone. It's not that. Men, because their bodies are stronger, men will become physically violent. That's why in jails, it is men who are much more than women. And women don't want equality in that regard. They want equal rights, but we don't want equal prisoners and equal female prisoners. And most of the criminals, because biologically, the male body is more inclined to violence in the physical direction. But women, they can also be violent. The violence comes in the form of gossiping. The violence comes in the form of backbiting. Violence comes in the form of spreading rumors. Now, can men do that? Of course men can do that. Can women also be physically violent? Of course they can be also physically violent. But in general, these anarthas are gender neutral. They are there in everyone. So, the point is that when we are provoked, in some way or the other, how do we behave at that time? That is an indication of the demons inside us, how strong are they? How bad are they? See, what does Krishna says? Kamesha, Krodhesha. Now, why does he talk of Kama and Krodha both over there? One way to understand it is that when Kama is not fulfilled, it leads to Krodha. That is true. But another way to understand it is that when calm is restricted in some way. See, everybody gets angry. This anger is just a normal human reaction to things not going our way. But for different people, anger may be to different degrees. For example, somebody who gets angry. So when there is anger, so some people, their anger might be, they raise their voice. For some people, when they get angry, they may insult. For some people, they may use not just insult, but they use swear words. What is a gali dena? Use foul words. Now all these three are at a verbal level, but each of them is different. If somebody comes to a temple and we hear them in a temple speaking swear words, so get out of the temple. You don't speak like this over here. So all these are expressions of anger, but there are boundaries. Isn't it? So somebody may raise their fists. They may raise their fists, but they may not attack anyone. But somebody may actually attack they may hit with fists. Somebody may look for a knife to attack someone. Somebody may come with a gun. And imagine if the President of America or Russia, they get angry, they can nuke a country. Isn't it? So now all these are expressions of anger, but they are definitely different degrees of expression of anger. Isn't it? So these are what? Each of these are all boundaries. So everybody, when they have anarthas, the anarthas have certain boundaries. And in a sense, a person is known, a person's character is known by their boundaries. It is known by their boundaries. Okay, everybody gets angry, but in anger, what do you do? How far do you go when you get angry? So everyone has some boundaries. Like say everybody is greedy. I mean, not everybody, but everybody wants to say that a company, they want to grow. They want to get promotion, they want to rise. And in every office, there will be typical office politics. You know, you try to network with this person, you try to join this person's group, you try to put this person down. That's typical office politics. That might be one thing. It's not a good part of life, but it is a part of life. But office politics is one thing, but illegally framing someone. You know the word framing? Framing means what? You plant some evidence to prove that this person is corrupt when that person is actually not corrupt. That's a very serious thing. No, okay, typical politicking is one thing, but framing someone so that they're wrong, that is crossing a boundary. Or people may spread rumors about each other, this person like this person like that. But then somebody starts spreading rumors about a colleague's family. His daughter did like this, or his wife is like this. That is also crossing a boundary. You don't go from the professional to you don't go and attack a person's family. So the point I'm making is, every society has certain boundaries. We all have certain boundaries also. Now, there are certain boundaries which we normally would not cross at all. Normally, we will talk politely with someone. If we get angry, we may raise our voice. But no matter how angry we are, we may not use swear words. That's something which is out of question. So that is a boundary for the anger. So for all of us, when Krishna says kamesha krodesha, there is a part of us which rages against boundaries. Why should this boundary be there? The rage is against the boundary. So some of you may know in Kolkata there was a ghastly rape. I was just in Kolkata 2 days before. So even now there are some protests going on, lesser. So now some people say rape is because of lust. That's a very oversimplified answer. Because if it's simply lust, a person can just go to a red light area. A person can, if it was simply lust, you can satisfy it anywhere. But along with lust, there is pride, there is power, there is ego. I want to control this person. This person who is not in my reach, the person who would not want to be with me, I want to force myself on this person. So there is much more than lust over there. So many people may have lust within them. Almost everybody, that is just a part of our biological situation, that male-female attraction is there. But most people, even if they had an opportunity, they would not force themselves on anyone. No, that's something which I'll not do. That's also, like many people may watch porn, but it's not that every person who watches porn is going to actually do the same thing in real life. Like so many people watch action movies. It's anger. How many people start trying to do the action stunts in real life? Now we may say lust and anger are not exactly the same, and there's truth to that. It's not exactly the same. But the point is that there are certain boundaries. Now some people may for them the boundary is there only because the opportunity is not there. That's why I want to say, morality is just lack of opportunity. Like I am honest because I have no opportunity to be corrupt. So, but everybody has certain boundaries. These boundaries come from inside us. And these boundaries are important. So, Kam Esha Krodesha means that even if there is an enemy inside me, and that enemy makes me do things which are against my values, but only till this far, not more than this. I won't go any further than this. Yeah, anger may make me yell at others, but no matter how angry I am, I'm not going to use swear words. So that is the boundary that we have. But the problem that happens is, if we keep doing something again and again and again, if we just keep letting anger control us again and again, then anger will keep pushing the boundaries. And we will end up doing things which we normally would never have done. So that's how a person's character starts going down, down, down. So what we have been discussing till now, see this inner war, it's at one level a subtle war. Subtle war means Something is subtle, we don't even notice that it is happening. And not only the subtle war, like even loss in this war can also be subtle. That I may not even realize, hey, I did this also, and I did this also, and I did this also. And maybe 6 months afterwards, like I had one friend who was an alcoholic before, now he has given up, he's practicing bhakti. So he said, I didn't even realize, once I started drinking alcohol, I started lying to my parents about what I needed money for. First I started lying to get time to go for drinking alcohol. I would say, no, I have got to go for this job, I have to go for this, I have to go for that. Then I started lying, not just about what I was doing, but I started lying about money also. I need money for this. I started doing money for that. So one of my friends told me that, how many grandmothers do you have? Each time, oh, my grandmother is sick, she's in the hospital, I need money for her. So he said, I took so much money from so many people. So now, at one time it happened that, now he was a working person, he said that his father was sick in the hospital and he had gone out to take some medicines for his father. And at that time, on the way to the shop, there was a bar. And he said, even without realizing, I just went straight into the bar. And then I took out the money and I was about to buy it. And then somehow, I saw, he said that in the bar, there was an elderly person sitting over there, and this elderly person, somehow something reminded me of my father. And then it just jolted me. What am I doing? Is my drinking more important than my father's health? What kind of person have I become that I'm spending the money for my father's medicine on my own drinks? He said, I was horrified. And that's the time I realized I need help. I have to change. So for all of us, it may not come to this level. Let's hope it doesn't come. But we all have these experiences when our actions become different from our values. And when sometimes it's very jolting. And when it happens, that's when we realize that I am in a war. And it's once we realize I am in a war, then everything else follows. How to fight, how to win, which wars to fight, which wars to not fight. All those are very important things. But most of the times, when we fail to fight against a temptation, it's often because we don't realize that how serious this war is. So I'll make 2 points and then I'll stop lastly. So just to conclude this point, like I said, each of us needs to have a vision of the best and the worst. So for example, say if I spend 30 minutes daily on social media. Now maybe 10 minutes is what is required. Maybe I want to be in touch with my friends. 30 minutes may be very less. Sometimes I spend 3 hours or 6 hours also. But let's take an example of social media. So maybe 10 minutes is required. We don't want to be out of it. We need to stay connected. And 20 minutes is extra. Now 20 minutes may not seem to be a lot of time. But 20 minutes every day, it becomes in a month, becomes 10 hours. Now 10 hours, we can do a lot of work in 10 hours. But there are some good courses online which for 10 hours we can do a whole course. We can learn something about a field. Now imagine it's in 1 year, it becomes 120 hours. In 120 hours I can write a whole book. Just 20 minutes every day, I can write a whole book. But those 20 minutes go away, I don't even realize it. So what happens is, because it's a subtle war, the loss also is subtle, it's not visible. So we have to look at the big picture. Where is this going to take me? Or, say 20 minutes every day, I spend reading the Bhagavad Gita. Maybe the whole Bhagavad Gita I can read in 6 months. That's not a small thing. Maybe I can read 2 cantos of the Bhagavatam in 1 year, just by reading 20 minutes. So both the positive, here best is, if I win, what is the result that I'll get? If I lose, where will I end up going? So it's when we see the big picture, the long-term vision, that's when it gives us the motivation to actually fight the war. Till that time, we may not even feel the need to fight the war. So that's one point. And then Krishna says that what is the conviction of a person who has realized that I am going to fight this war. I am in it. So let's recite this verse, or I'll tell the meaning, then we'll recite it. Prajahati yada kaman. So kaman here refers to worldly desires. Like they are like the enemy agents inside us. Prajahati, nothing doing, no. Sarvan partha manogatan. The mind is, oh, this will make you happy, this will make you happy, this will make you happy. Our mind is coming up with so many ideas. No, I'm not going to do any of these things. Then what are we going to do? While what we are not going to do is important, but what we are going to do is also much more important. That is, Atmanya eva atmana tushta. We turn our consciousness inward and find inner happiness. Inner happiness is realizing that we are Satchitananda souls. It is in realizing that Krishna is within our hearts. We have an eternal relationship with Krishna. Tushtaha, one finds happiness. And STHITAPRAJNA'S, and we discussed that word, tad ochate. The person who is a seasoned spiritual warrior, the person who is really serious about the fight, these are the 2 characteristics. That person turns away from all the worldly promises of pleasure, and that person turns toward inner happiness. So prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushtaha STHITAPRAJNA'S tadochate. So basically, these verses, this 2.5, it is both descriptive and prescriptive. Descriptive means it describes a spiritual warrior. This is what the consciousness of a spiritual warrior is. Prescriptive is, this is how we can become a spiritual warrior. Both are being described over here. Or both are being told in this verse. So, what is the key thing over here? Say, if this is the soul, now this is the mind. So, and then there are some sense objects over here. The soul, the mind, and the sense objects. So there is a part of us which seeks pleasure. Hey, come on, enjoy that. It largely, this arises from the mind. So, prajahati yada kaman. The mind is always like, come on, eat this, watch this, enjoy this. So this whole pursuit of pleasure through various things, no, prajahati yada kaman. And the second is, atmanya evatmana tushta. So I turn inwards. Prabhupada says, one who seeks external happiness is a materialist. One who seeks internal happiness is a spiritualist. So now, how can we live? Can we turn away from everything in the outer world? And what does turning into the inner world mean? That we will discuss in our future sessions. But essentially, the characteristic of a person who has now decided, I am going to fight a war, that is, okay, stop chasing outer pleasure and find inner happiness. Find happiness within. To the extent we do these 2 things, to that extent we start winning the inner war. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. We started by talking about the inner war metaphor. Metaphor is basically, we are comparing the situation to the inner war. So in the inner war metaphor, the idea is it's like our consciousness we are fighting. On one side is Maya, on another side is Krishna. That's the broad understanding. Now, I didn't go into that basically, but we talked about how there are our values, and then there are our desires which seem to work against us. There's something from inside us which works against us. And this is a war. So we discuss that if somebody doesn't fight, when there is a war but somebody doesn't fight a war, that may be because they are not strong enough, that they feel I cannot win this war. They are not invested enough. It means they feel, even if I lose something, what is the big deal? It's just a small thing to lose. Or they may not be aware enough. They're not aware itself that a war is going on. So we discussed how to get this awareness. Two ways. One is when our actions violate our boundaries. When we do something which we normally would not do. So we need to contemplate. It's by contemplating that, I never thought I would lie like this. I never thought I would waste money like this. I never thought I would waste this much time. So there are times when this has happened to us. Maybe we think, okay, I just like to watch some movies. But we keep watching a movie, and then one day before a critical exam, we spend all the time watching a movie. This is nonsense. How could I do something like this? But don't just beat yourself up. Recognize that there is a war over there. So contemplate when our actions violate our values or our boundaries specifically. See, we all have anarthas, but we all keep the anarthas within certain boundaries. So I give the example of when I was about to hit a friend. That's when, this is not the kind of person I want to be. And the other thing is contemplate the long-term results. If I continue doing this, like whether I win or lose, it seems to be a very small thing. But down the line, losing will take me in one direction, winning will take me in a very different direction. So we think in long term. And then lastly, we discussed in terms of the 4 questions that how does the person defend, how does the person attack, what is their fighting spirit, and that is seen through their speech, and what are their convictions. So in terms of convictions, we discussed what is the conviction? That a person with respect to external sense objects says no. And inner happiness, yes. This is the conviction with which a person who is a spiritual warrior acts. So how they will defend and how they will attack, and also the speech, we'll discuss these in our next sessions tomorrow and day after. Any questions or comments at this point? Yes, please.
The last point that you made, in which we look inwards and find happiness within. So all this we aspire to become now. Right now we are not this.
Yes, true.
When we become Sthitaprajna, then we will have these qualities.
Yes, that is true. But it's also that by trying to do that, say for example, somebody wants to have a very fit body. Then they may say, okay, this person is very fit. This person exercises every day. This person regulates their diet, this. Okay, maybe if that person does exercise for 1 hour every day, as you. Then I may decide, okay, I may not have the physique of that person, but I can also start. Maybe I can't exercise 1 hour. Maybe I start with 15 minutes. So we start. So that's why it's descriptive of those who are realized, but it's also prescriptive for those who want to become realized. Okay? Thank you. Yes, please. Can you turn on the fan here?
Hare Krishna Bhaji. Thank you Bhaji. प्रभु जी ये बता रहे थे एंगर के अलग अलग बाउंड्रीज. सो ये बाउंड्रीज जो बताएं तो ये सबके अंदर रहती हैं ये बाउंड्री कि प्रैक्टिसेस के साथ साथ ही ख़त्म होती रहती हैं या फिर कम ज़्यादा होती हैं?
बाउंड्रीज तो सब में होते ही हैं. एवरीवन, सी सम बाउंड्रीज, if you consider boundaries, there are some individual boundaries. इसके बारे में हम कल चर्चा और करेंगे. We'll discuss this more tomorrow. Individual boundaries means I cannot do something like this. But then there are social boundaries. Say individual boundary might be that I don't want to drive very fast. Like say if you're driving a car and the speed limit is 60, I don't want to drive above the 70, 80. I don't want to drive. Once a cop pulled over a person. He said, the speed limit is 60, you are driving at 90. Did you not see the speed limit? I said, I saw the speed limit, I just didn't see you. So the idea is, some people, they follow a boundary just because they don't want to get caught. But some others, they may themselves realize, that these boundaries are for my own safety. I have a friend who is an orthopedic surgeon. He was once going his car from his home to the hospital. So there was a young man. Some young men, when they have a motorcycle, it's like the speed demon comes into them. And just, there is something very, it's like some daredevilish kind of spirit seems to come into them. Drive very fast, make a lot of noise, just go zoop, 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 and everybody catches their attention. So, so there's this young man who was driving very fast, and he went, and his devotee saw him, and then that person stopped at a signal, and he also pulled next to him, and he rolled his car window and took out his visit card. And he said, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, you are going to soon need my services. So, some boundaries are there because society imposes them. Some boundaries are there because we are our own individual, we have some boundaries. But everybody has some boundaries. And if we respect those boundaries, then we stay within those boundaries. If we disregard those boundaries, then we'll keep going further and further and further. Like somebody may say, I can drink and drive, but nobody will catch me. I can take drugs and go to college. But I can cover up. Nobody notices that I'm taking drugs. Okay, one day a person takes a little drugs, next day they take a little more drugs. Then after some time they'll take so much that the only person that doesn't notice that others are not noticing is they themselves. Everybody knows that they're drinking. And one day the authorities catch and they get expelled from college or whatever. Something terrible happens. So by our actions, either the boundaries can be strengthened or the boundaries can be weakened. Okay? So, yes, true.
So my question is that you said
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी. प्रभु जी, मेरा ये प्रश्न है कि जैसे आपने बताया कि जब हम जनरली माया की तरफ, मतलब माया जो इल्यूशंस देती है, so that we have to stop, and then we have to like sense objects are there, so we need to stop there and we need to go inward. So when we have sense objects in front of us, so we stop there, and then we need to turn to Krishna, and there is a time to get the inner strength, and there is time to get the inner taste. So how that gap is filled? The moment that we are not enjoying the sense objects, and there is a time to get the taste in Krishna.
See, a lot depends on the association around us. If, say, we are around people who have values similar to us, then what happens is, the people around us, they will discourage us, they will warn us, they will correct us, or even just by their disapproval. So, for example, if young boys are there, when they see an attractive girl going by, they may whistle, cat calls, they may start chasing her. And you may say boys will always be boys, and people may justify it like that. But then, say, if we are with devotees or people who live a little more sattvic life, and then they may say, what are you doing? Or even if they don't say anything, we just don't want to, we don't want to look, we want to be accepted and respected in that social circle. So culture, the kind of culture around us plays a very significant role. So see, there was this one devotee from America, he asked me recently, he said that, you say Indian culture is so spiritual, but the kind of violence that happens against women here in India, it doesn't happen in America also. So why is that? So now, it is true. Like, in America, a woman can go out jogging in the morning or at night, and just fairly, not everywhere. There are high crime areas there also. So what has happened is, in the West, there are always some boundaries for gender interactions. In traditional societies, the boundary was basically geography. Like men would work in certain areas, women would work in certain areas, and there was separation. So, now, in modern culture, people may work in the same office, people may intermix quite a bit. But what has happened is, as Western culture has come about, now Western culture may have free mixing, that is true, but there is respect for the boundary of consent. That you don't force yourself that on anyone. Now, that doesn't mean that there is no violence against women. There is a lot of violence against women in the West also, but relatively speaking. So what has happened is that there, the way the culture has shaped the consent is seen as a very important boundary. In India, it's like it's caught in no man's land. That the boundary of geography is no longer there, but the boundary of consent, it has not entered into people's minds. So especially if people who work in software, people are a little bit more educated, there is free Xing, there might be affairs, but there is very rarely violence. But what happens is, people who are not that well educated, I'm not talking about education brings character or something like that, but education brings a certain kind of culture with it. So people who are not very well educated, their idea is geography is the boundary, and if the geography is not there, if a woman is dressed in a particular way, a woman is alone, she's fair game. And people, they get the opportunity, grab it. So many of these companies, one of my devotee friends came from America back to India, and he said, many of the software companies, we may say there is free mixing and all that, but there is the respect for boundaries. Like if the women work in a software company, they not only have cabs which take them to their home directly, but they often have an escort who will escort the woman from the cab door to her home door. And then they will deliver her there, and then she go back. So there is that respect for individuality and consent. Now consent is not the same as dharma. That is not necessarily a dharmic boundary. People can, sex is not just between consenting adults. Sex is for procreation. It should happen within marriage. But my point is, every society needs to have some boundaries. So Indian society, what has happened is, the traditional boundary of geography is no longer there, but the contemporary boundary of consent has not been registered in many people's minds. And those people who are in between, what happens is, if there is no geography boundary, geography means somebody is there in the same area where you are and that person appears vulnerable, people just grab that opportunity. Now that doesn't mean this is coming from the Indian tradition. The traditional boundary is not just geography. The traditional boundary is respect for dharma. The traditional boundary is self-control, coming from spiritual knowledge, from dharmic knowledge. But that is how society is, and it's not just India. In many traditional countries, the violence against women is much more. So it is a complicated situation. But every society needs to have certain boundaries. And without boundaries, societies cannot function. Many companies, they have policies against employees dating. That they say if employees start having a romantic relationship, then their attention from work will go away. But then other people say that And nowadays, everybody is so busy at their work. Apart from that work, they don't even have time to meet anyone else. So there is some debate about whether employees should be dating or not. So these are all issues that will have to be dealt with. The principle of boundaries is universal. The specific boundary, which boundary will apply when and where, that has to be done according to the Ilashesha Kalapatra. I had this experience when I started going to America. So I was in America in 2016, and I was giving a college class in Texas University. And after that, one American girl, she asked a question that, why do religions fight against each other, or fight among each other? So then I answered elaborately based on the three modes of material nature and fanaticism and everything. I could see she was quite satisfied with the answer. So after the class, several students were coming and talking with me. Then she came, said, this question was such a big burden on me. And your answer has relieved me. I'm so grateful. Can I give you a hug? So now the devotee who organized the program, I looked at him, I said, please help me. So then he helped me, but in an entirely unexpected way. He stepped forward, he said, he's a monk. On his behalf, you can hug me. His wife was next to him. And his wife said, I am his wife, on his behalf you can hug me. Now, so I talked about this with my spiritual master afterwards. So he said that, as a brahmachari, you cannot touch any woman, but at the same time, for them, it's just a normal expression of affection. So you have to be polite. Even if you say no, in India, we may say, what kind of uncultured person are you? Who do you think I am? Don't you know how to behave? We might get angry with such a person. But in the West, we can't do that because they may have, they may not have. We cannot assume that they have any bad intention. It might just, because it's a normal expression of affection for them. So, how boundaries have to be there. And boundaries need to be implemented. But how exactly the boundaries need to be implemented, that has to be actually very carefully decided. Okay. Was my answer sufficiently confusing? Not sufficiently confusing. Okay. Okay, so we will continue tomorrow. Okay. Do we have time right now? Prabhu, our class is till 4:30 or 4:45? 4:30, no? Yeah, so we'll continue tomorrow. We'll have time for question answers. So we'll discuss about this inner war tomorrow. And when I'm speaking all these things, it's not like I'm a victorious spiritual warrior. This is a war we are all fighting. And we all win sometimes, we all lose sometimes. But understanding how the war occurs and understanding what weapons we can use, that can help each other. We all can help each other in fighting this war. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhakti.